Videos for AED160. It's an introduction to dynamic blocks. First, on the R drive, there's a copy of some material that was removed from your textbook on dynamic blocks from Chapter 5. Textbook got just a little bit long, so go ahead and read that. And there's a tutorial in there. And what I'm going to do right now is just walk through the tutorial and indicate how you would add dynamic properties. First place, so this is the actual PDF file from the textbook. There are really two kinds of objects involved with dynamic blocks. You have to understand the difference between. One are actions and one are parameters. As it says here, actions are things that happen, verbs, and are usually represented by command names. Parameters are the values that control those actions. So they show you down here that there is a dynamic block, and this is a block of an exterior elevation window symbol. And you'll notice it's got some things around it, and it's in the block editor. On the left-hand side, there's a palette that has a tab for parameters and a tab for actions. And the third tab we can ignore for just now. One of the parameters listed over here is a linear parameter. And down here where it says window width and over here where it says window height, those things that look like dimensions are linear parameters. Once you place the parameter, then you can add to it an action. In this case, the action is stretch and stretch. And what happens is the action is associated with the parameter. You change the parameter and then the window stretches, so that you have to have both things normally. There's sometimes when you can use just a parameter, but normally you have to have both kinds of entities assigned to a block. And the order in which you assign them is that you put the parameters in first and then you assign the actions. Scroll down to the area of the chapter that actually begins the tutorial, and here it is. What you need to do is start by just drawing a plan view of a window. In this case, I've got a window that has an extended sill, a couple of lines that are vertical representing the outside opening, and then a couple of lines that are horizontal representing that it is a double hung window. So what I'm going to do here is go into AutoCAD. AutoCAD 2009 is what I'll be using for this. So I'm going to start it and I'm going to open up the block editor. The block editor is opened up with the bEdit command. bEdit command has an alias of BE. When it opens up, I'm going to say let's give this block a name. We'll call it WIN for window. I come into the block authoring area, and this is, you can see a slightly different color in the background. You can also see over here as a palette block authoring, and there's parameters associated with them and actions associated with them here. And I'm going to start by just creating some geometry. And by creating the geometry, I'm just going to throw this in here. Oop, that's the wrong thing. That's a little better. Okay, so what I've got here is my little drawing of the window. And these are just individual lines, and right in the block editor you can draw them. Now, by default, if anything's placed at 0, 0, the 0, 0 location becomes the insertion point of the block. But we're going to start by using a parameter called base point. It's one of the few parameters that does not require an action. If you go over here and look at this list, you go down the list, we're going to scroll just a little bit, base point parameter. If I select the base point parameter, I get the prompt select location. What I'm going to do is to shift right click midway between 2 points and say let's put the base point parameter right there. That becomes the insertion point. You can only have one base point parameter per drawing, per block definition. So that's what we start with right here. Now if we come on down, next thing I want to do is to add a linear parameter using that parameters tablet. And you can see what I'm going to do is put a parameter that controls the width of that window. We'll go back to AutoCAD. As drawn, if I do a distance on this, as drawn, the width of that window is 24 inches because that's the smallest window in the series of windows that I'm going to create the block for. Pick a linear parameter, and it's just like putting a linear dimension on something. Place it right here. We can leave it named that, or I could right-click, go down to the rename function. This is right there, rename label. I could say instead of calling that distance, let's say I want to call that window width. Very good idea to rename these so that you can tell what the heck's going on. If you see that little exclamation mark, it tells you, okay, you've got a parameter, but it doesn't have any action associated with it, so we wouldn't know what to do if we were to change that parameter, what would actually change. So we have to add an action. Go back and take a look at the next step here. What we're going to do now is switch tabs from the parameters tab to the actions tab, and we're going to add a stretch action, and we're going to place it right there. And then you notice that there's a little stretch window here. So let's go through the steps for doing that, because once you place that, you've got two things you need to do with the crossing windows. One of them is to indicate where the stretch parameter is going to take place, and then you also have to then select the entities that will be affected by the stretch parameter, and that happens in two steps. So we'll go back, we'll switch over to actions. I'll find the stretch action right here. It says select parameter. There's a parameter I want to select. Now it asks me to specify the parameter point to be associated, so I'm going to pick that point right there. First corner of the stretch frame, I'm going to do this. Now that's just indicating where the stretch should start from, where it should be located from. It does not actually select the entities. I have to do that now. So what entities do I want affected by the stretch? I'm going to do that inside and say those are all the entities. And the only things here I don't have are those vertical lines, because I want those to stay put. Now, my action location, this is just a label. I can put this anywhere. Since I'm over on this side, I'm just going to place my action label right there. Once I place the action label there, I can also select it, right-click, and I can rename that. Down here to the rename. Well, you can't see that. It's off the screen, but then I'll the rename. And now I'll call this one stretch left. I'm sorry, right. I'll put another one over on the other side. So now I've set that up. Go back to my tutorial, come down through here, and it goes through the process of stretch point, shows you what it's named, shows you how to change the name. Now what I want to do is indicate a stretch left. I also, besides just doing the stretch right, I want to go stretch left, because when I place this window, I'd like it to stretch in two directions, one to the right and one to the left. So, stretch left I haven't placed yet. We'll go back and do that in AutoCAD. That requires that I go back and add another stretch action, which is why there's still an exclamation point. It's saying you could still add another action to this. So when it asks me to select the parameter, there's my parameter, there's the location of this one. I'm going to go ahead and put my crossing window through here, put another crossing window through there, put that here. I'll go back in and rename that. This time I'm going to grab it to rename it, and let's bring up the properties palette as well. If we bring up the properties palette, you'll see that stretch actions have all kinds of properties that you can control, one of which is the name. So instead of right-clicking and changing the name there, I'm going to change it right here. There's my stretch left. Come back out. It says stretch left when I come back out here. Now that's actually enough to make this work. If I go and open up my block editor, go to the ribbon and pick Close Block Editor, save changes to Windows, yes. Now if I come back out here and I insert my window block and I put it in place like that, I now have a dynamic block. It goes this way and it goes that way. The problem is left and right are independent of each other, and the stretching increment is non-logical. In other words, I can make a window that size, but I can't buy a window that size. So that at the moment isn't all that useful to me. Go back in the block editor, use the Win as my block that I'm editing, and now we're going to constrain these actions. Let's go back to the handout. Now if you go ahead and take a look at this handout, there's a value set property, and that value set property is not for the action, it's for the linear parameter. And on the value set you can have a type of distance, incremental, a minimum size for something, a maximum size for something, and then have the increment. So this is a window. The window's normally from the company that we're going to get these from. Increment up in 3-inch blocks. So it starts at 24, then it goes to 27, then it goes to 30. 24 is the smallest, 48 is the largest. And then down below we have this miscellaneous, and there's a base point option called midpoint. We're going to change both of those in order to make this window a little bit more useful. So I come back over, grab my parameter. I've got my properties over here now. If I go down in the properties under geometry, down here in the geometry, I'm sorry, it's not geometry, it is value set. If I come down here in the value set, under distance type, instead of none, I'm going to say I want it incremental. The increment I want is going to be 3 inches. The minimum value is 24, and then the maximum value is 48. So in other words, I can have this thing as small as 2 feet and as large as 4 feet. Now, if I close that up, go to the miscellaneous category, and open up the miscellaneous category, my base point, is it going to be the start point or is it going to be the midpoint? I'm going to select midpoint. Now I've made a few changes to the properties of that linear parameter. I'll go close my block editor again. I'll go back out. Now when I insert this window, I can still move it, but you'll see what happens is it will only stretch in 3-inch increments. It'll only go as large as that and as small as this. And those little scale along the side here shows you my incremental changes. So there's 2 feet, there's 27, there's 30, there's 33, 36, 39, 42, 45, 42, 45, and 48. That works. And then you notice it goes both ways. I'm going to stop this video and then we'll continue on the next one.